we're not doing enough to get pets in for their, not just their routine, but overall care. And 1 in 4 families experience barriers to getting care across the U.S. And, you know, a lot of this leads to pets ending up in shelters, pets being euthanized.
Day, everybody. This is Dr. Bonnie Bragdon with the Veterinary Insider. The Veterinary Insider is the podcast for every veterinarian who wants to keep veterinary medicine independent and veterinary owned. Today's episode is brought to you by United Pet Care as well as the Independent Veterinary Practitioners Association. I hope you'll check out the Independent Veterinary Practitioners Association at iveterinarians.org. My favorite benefit for independent veterinary practitioners from IVPA is teleradiology. That's independent radiologists serving independent clinicians. And with that, I'd like to introduce my 2 guests today. I have Aaron Oakes, CEO of United Pet Care, and Heidi Sirota, marketing and pet insurance guru, executive extraordinaire. I'm so excited to have you both on here today. Now, I am going to start. I always have to start by poking and prodding. And Aaron, I feel like maybe you and I, maybe even Heidi, we need to be wearing our lightning rod, right? Our tin cap. Because Aaron, you have the nerve, the audacity, the courage to suggest veterinarians should be discounting their services. Woo-hoo! Aaron, tell me more. Discounting services. We have been told for years, never, ever, ever should we be discounting prices. So Aaron, I really want to hear your authentic response to this.
Absolutely. And Bonnie, thanks so much for having me on. Very well aware and have been made aware since my kind of first day in this role that discounting is considered the D word within veterinary medicine circles. Maybe just make one small amendment in terms of what our recommendation would be adding the word strategically. Now, I think we've all seen many examples of non-strategic discounting. My running joke or the example is Banana Republic, where anybody that pays full price for a sweater at Banana Republic is kind of a sucker because you can just wait for that massive sale 3 or 4 times a year. That would be what I call kind of an example of non-strategic discounting. When we say strategic discounting, we kind of liken it more to pricing segmentation. And I do very full-heartedly recommend that veterinarians, in order to gain access to potentially high-value customers and pools of customers, consider strategically pricing their services so that they can maximize both their patient visits, their volume, and overall their profitability.
Heidi, I love this idea of segmentation, right? So for our average listener, a veterinary practice or a practice manager, they may not understand the concept of segmentation. So Heidi, as a marketing guru and executive, can you walk us through, help us understand what customer segmentation is and how we might be matching price towards segment and how that really applies to a specific veterinary practice?
Sure. Marketing segmentation in broad strokes is just creating pools of customers and delivering products or pricing or services or whatever according to their stated or sometimes unstated needs and desires. In the veterinary space, I liken it to thinking about the spectrum of care. And the spectrum of care is all about finding the right solution for a pet family in the service of their pet's care, right? Not everybody can pay for or thinks it's appropriate to get the gold standard of care, and that might be all that's offered to them. Some people might have an older pet that it may not be in their wishes to extend the life beyond, where they are today. And they don't want to put the pet down, but they want to keep the pet comfortable, right? And so doing a big surgery may not be the right thing. Many families can't afford veterinary care and what it costs today. And understanding that there should be a range of options presented can really help them get the care they need for their pet, and help that pet extend their life, live a longer, healthier, more comfortable life. And also let the vet do what they're paid to do, what they've been trained to do, what they love to do. And that is keeping pets healthy.
So I really love this idea of spectrum of care, and we're going to dig into that over time. But really, as a reminder to our audience, the new fashionable or hot topic is this idea of spectrum of care. When I went through school, it was good, better, best, gold option, bronze option. With those words and those labels, we're implying that one level of care is bad and one level of care is good. And so we're really trying to take that out of the realm of good, better, best and put it more in the realm of what's appropriate and what meets the needs of that particular pet family and that particular pet. So just as a reminder, spectrum of care is about serving the needs of that particular pet parent. I've heard pet parents who go beyond what I would do for my pet, wanting to do a kidney transplant, dialysis. I personally and ethically don't believe that's right for my pet. But then I have other pet consumers who feel like, oh my gosh, I really do want to limit what's done. So again, talking about spectrum of care rather than good, better, and best. So Heidi, you really have your finger. You are marketer extraordinaire, insurance executive, right?
I love the title.
You are our guru, our connection with consumers and pet parents. Help me understand, what are pet parents and consumers thinking about pricing? What it's easy for us veterinarians. I teased Aaron that, as veterinarians, we get very hung up on our prices and discounts. Sometimes I almost think that we feel like it's a reflection of our intrinsic value, but that's not what consumers think. What are consumers thinking about prices in those financial conversations?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that a pet parent doesn't want to be shocked about a price to take care of their pet, and more importantly, caught in a bind. Prices of veterinary care and other kinds of pet care are rising rapidly. Inflation in veterinary care was about more than three times CPI last year. And, it's a hard pill to swallow when you show up to get your pet care and the bill is $3,000, $5,000, when maybe you were expecting to spend a few hundred. So important not to have them be shocked and caught in that bind. Some of the ways around that: pricing transparency, being able to show this is what you can expect to spend for this kind of care. Let me give you a written estimate. Let you choose the services you do or do not want. In fact, my dog right now is in surgery, and that's exactly what happens. He's okay. I just got a text right before we started recording. But he got some surgery today, and they gave me a manifest of all of the different pieces and parts of the surgery and the things that were editable, if you will, by me, right? And it gave me a real sense of, okay, I understand what I'm paying for and how much I want to pay for or not, how much care I want to give or not. Of course, I took the full boat because, that's how I am. And I also have insurance. But every pet family is different and has different means. A few other things I think that go into this idea of paying for care. One is, lots of pet insurers, United Pet Care, wellness companies offer telehealth, and you can buy it outright as well. And telehealth is really great for pet families to help them understand when they don't need to go to a vet because it's not critical, or there's something that they can do at home to care for the pet, saving them a lot of money, and more importantly, saving them the stress on the pet as well. And then when I just think about methods of payment or how they'll pay for the care that they need, people really appreciate payment plans. Things that are reliable and understandable to them, things that allow them to budget or pay in installments. Some people like and can afford insurance. They especially like insurance if they can be reimbursed at the checkout rather than lay out the money and have it be paid back. And just, I just kind of wrap it all up in this idea of transparency and knowing what you're going to expect, not being surprised. Whatever you can do to make it palatable and payable by the pet parent or consumer, that's going to be better for them.
Heidi, I think your vet is leading about 99% of all human healthcare facilities based on that example that you shared. So I love that. And I agree. I think it's kind of a great gold star example. Maybe just one quick addition. And, I believe in seeing the world as it is, not as how we'd like it to be. The reality, Bonnie, is a lot of pet parents are not thinking about the cost of care. 23 million pets that entered into homes, through this COVID wave, a huge percentage of first-time pet parents. There was just a national shelter study that was released, and I believe it's about 75% of pet parents have now said they didn't realize how expensive owning a pet was, and that will be a consideration. Some of them have unfortunately given the pet back already, or certainly there's a big subset that have said that they will not consider getting another pet because of the cost. And so I do think this is 0% the fault of the veterinarian or the veterinary practitioner, is that they have no frame of reference. And, that animal is a fur baby until they realize that the level of care, the education that veterinarians go through, the equipment that they use, the technology they use is on par with human healthcare. And therefore the expenses can be in the range of human healthcare. But if you've never owned a pet before, then that may come as a sticker shock regardless. One of the big things that we advocate, and this won't take care of every situation, is to start to encourage people to consume that care in digestible chunks. One way to avoid sticker shock is to see the vet on a regular basis so that those little problems don't become big problems, and that you can get those routine tests and the things spread out over multiple visits in a year, as opposed to I waited, for 2 or 3 years to take my pet in. Now I'm back on vaccines. There are a lot of things that should have been done that maybe would not have kind of triggered that very visceral reaction to a really high bill. Very similar to a car, very similar to our own, human healthcare, is just consuming them in more digestible pieces, which ultimately is much better for the animal. It's much better for the practice with predictable revenue, and financially, it's often better for the pet parent.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit more to that. Some of the data that Aaron shared, I'll add more than a third of pet parents delayed an annual visit to their vet due to the cost. And about a quarter delayed vaccines and other preventive care, which, as you know, if you don't get those things, it could lead to disease that they'll need to go to the vet for. And in underserved communities, of course, it's even worse, right? They may not have a vet in their area or what have you. Almost 7 in 10 pets have never brought their pet to the vet in an underserved area. So, we're not doing enough to get pets in for their not just their routine, but overall care. And 1 in 4 families experience barriers to getting care across the U.S. A lot of this leads to pets ending up in shelters, pets being euthanized. About 2 million pets are surrendered a year to shelters, about half of them due to what is called pet problems, which includes their inability to be able to pay for care. So they see they're not able to get care, and their best alternative is let me bring it to a shelter, and hopefully the shelter can rehabilitate this pet and somebody can adopt it that can afford it. That's just a terrible choice for families to make. And the worst is about 1.5 million pets are euthanized needlessly in shelters a year when 99% of them were adoptable. So, it all starts at, I can't give my pet care. What do I do next? So how do we enable more people to get that care?
I think that's a really good use case for strategic discounting, right? So if you think about discounting as a way of incentivizing behavior, if you want somebody to come in, this is why our product is more akin to a wellness plan than an underwritten insurance product, which we may talk about at some point. But, why do wellness plans, when they work, why do they work? You have a proactive investment in that care. So that's that fear of loss or sunk cost. I'm plugging this money in. I want to kind of get the most out of my membership. And I feel like I'm getting a deal on care. And so that's where I think, again, not kind of indiscriminately discounting, but saying, hey, what are the behaviors that I want to incentivize? And what are the tools that I have as a practitioner in my tool bag? Marketing is a great tool. Education is a great tool. These are things that we deploy as well, but also where, of course, we would advocate for strategic discounting or price segmentation in order to get more of those pet parents into that kind of proactive and invested bucket that can avoid all of those very real problems that Heidi just spoke to.
So what I'm hearing you say is using pricing is almost like using treats for your pet, right? So we have fear-free for our dogs and our cats, and we give them Cheese Whiz, and we give them cuddles, and we entice them to have the right behaviors so that we can serve the needs of our patients in a fear-free manner. And what I'm hearing you say is pricing is almost like fear-free for pet owners.
I love that analogy. I mean, we're not that much further up the evolutionary curve. We've got simian brains, and people respond to incentives, right? I think that's been pretty well proven.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a minute, okay? I'm going to push back. I love what you have to say, that we really want to get as many pets cared for as possible, but the veterinarian in me is coming out and saying, yeah, but I'm understaffed. I've got too much work. I can't handle any more workload. Why would I want to discount my services when I can't even keep up with what I have? So Aaron, let's really dig into how United Pet Care, how your program works. Help us understand what United Pet Care does that meets the needs of veterinarians as well as pet owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a voluntary benefit. We call ourselves a pet healthcare membership network. On the human side, we liken ourselves to kind of an HMO for fur babies. And so we work with a network of veterinarians nationwide. As alluded to earlier, we negotiate a discount off of usual and customary fees that our members are given proprietary access to by virtue of joining the program. On the other side of the network, we distribute exclusively as a voluntary benefit offered by their employers. And so to again, talk about kind of moving more of a practice's clients into that ideal bucket. Some of that is also patient and client selection. And so what we found is that by offering as a benefit, we find folks that are enrolling in our program that are going through that same kind of psychographic motion as enlisting their own human dependents, adding dental, adding life insurance, that type of person that's planning for the future, that's thinking ahead to what might happen, and making that investment even when there's not maybe an acute need that's immediately presenting themselves is just something that we've generally found translates into a kind of A-type client for veterinarians or honestly for any practitioner. So to answer that very valid concern, understaffed, overworked, I think one of the things that we, encourage our veterinary practitioners to think about is how is your time being spent and with whom? Because at the end of the day, are you doing the things that drive highest ROI? Do you have the clients that are going to be thinking about things in the way that you are? And how do you effectively and efficiently manage your time to optimize for that? Sometimes that can mean an investment in incremental support staff. I know depending on the state, there's lots of things that are being discussed about expansion of responsibilities and things like that. But I think in general, our average practice that we work with is about 2 docs. We found that ratio of support staff is typically pretty low based on AVMA, accreditations and recommendations. And, a very real reason behind that is labor is not a variable cost, it's a step function cost. And so you have to go out over your skis a little bit financially, assuming you're not, on a 6-week wait list, which certainly some practices still are, to make sure that new person that you hire is going to be fully productive. And that's where we help. We basically source new clients through this voluntary benefit offering. Very akin to an HMO or a direct primary care model, they pick a primary care veterinarian. That's the only place where their discounts are good. So we lock that client in, 100% share of wallet, and generally for a good chunk of the life of the pet. Our average member stays with us about 6 years and joins, kind of middle of that pet's life on average. And so it allows that veterinarian, again, to plan because they can budget for higher visits, higher overall spend, and hopefully forecast out a little bit of, hey, if we know that there's 100 employers in my area that are offering this program, here's an idea of the number of new clients that may translate to me over the course of a 3 to 6 month and then longer term stretch.
I have so many questions, so many things that could be done. So Heidi, I'm going to turn to you for a moment because one of the things I'd like to hear your opinion on, I heard Aaron, these are supposed to be A clients. Yeah, we've heard that before. Heidi, in your experience with consumer marketing and that connection with pet parents, tell us more about people who are actually proactively planning for the care for their pet, right? That seems to be a very different customer than maybe what veterinarians are used to having wander into their practice.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, maybe 5% of pet parents are planning for the care of their pet, right? By buying an insurance product, a network product like Erin described, or something else. And then there is another percentage, I don't know the number, who may be buying wellness plans through like a Banfield or their private veterinarian or something else. But the number overall in terms of pet parents and the pets that are owned by these pet parents is very low, who are planning or have the ability to plan for that cost. So how can we help? Are there different modalities to deliver care? And, the question you asked before about veterinarians are overwhelmed, they have more patients than they need, and why would I discount my services if I'm already full, that sort of thing. Well, are they full with the right things? Do they need to be the person or the office that is doing very basic kinds of care that maybe can be done through telehealth or at-home diagnostic testing or something of that nature? I had my last dog, she passed a few years ago from chronic kidney disease. And one of the things I learned as we were treating her, we would bring her into the vet, and this was during COVID, so it was kind of a nightmare. We would bring her into the vet every, maybe twice a week to get fluids subcutaneously. And we did that 4 or 5 or 6 times, whatever. And I don't remember the cost exactly, but let's say it was about $75 for that to be done. And it was a tech that did it. And at one of the visits, the tech said to me, you can do this at home. We can give you the supplies and, teach you how to do it. And I'll hook you up with a YouTube video and you can do it at home. And I was like, okay, it's COVID. It's stressful. My dog was already a nervous Nelly, right? And going into the vet was no fun. And then getting pricked, and then doing it during business hours when my husband and I worked, right? It was just a real challenge to maintain. When she gave me that option, first of all, it cut the price to almost nothing, right? It was maybe $20, give or take, for the supplies for 8 or 10 applications versus $75 or so every time I went in. And, excuse me, we could do it at bedtime when our dog was ready to go down for the night. It made such a huge difference. Are there opportunities like that where, vets can offer alternative ways of getting that care and preserve their time for the things that really need a veterinarian involved, that are higher volume, not the volume, but higher dollar services, that'll still allow them financially to thrive, but really put their energy where it's needed?
So, Erin, I love what you said about strategic planning, right? I don't think veterinarians think enough. So I really want to hear your expertise and your experience. I don't think veterinarians think enough about the cost to acquire a client. I don't think, to Heidi's point, they're thinking about the mix of services and how they're generating revenue. And I don't think they think about their geography maybe as much as you kind of talked about. So is there any kind of reporting function from United Pet Care? Is there any kind of, consultative type service that you provide veterinarians who participate in your plan?
We do. So we offer reporting. As mentioned, when a patient or a new client signs up and picks a primary care vet, we actually have a revenue share, kind of analogous to a capitated payment, that we send to our practitioners. Now that's agnostic of utilization. And so they can, the vet can log in at any time and see the number of pet parents that have enlisted or kind of nominated their practice as their primary care vet. They can see pet information, employer information, to kind of in general get a sense of, of kind of the volume of new clients that they could be expecting. As you would imagine, most benefits enroll in a 1/1 time frame, and so there are some big spikes kind of depending on when new employers come on. But again, that should help a little bit in terms of seeing that proactive number of new folks signed up, and then doing some planning from a capacity standpoint, planning for 3 to 4 visits on average. Our members on average visited the vets 3 times, with about 55% of our members visiting the vet 4 times or more last year. From a data standpoint, we don't process claims data. That's just an agreement that happens between the pet parent and the vet, but we do exhaustively survey our members, and we also do our best to share those results specifically for our practice, but we also release them on a regular basis, just kind of writ large. Last year, our members on average reported spending $1,440 per pet at the vet, which is pretty significantly above any national baseline, kind of depending on whichever report you want to pull. And that's also where we get the visit data as well. We also survey around member satisfaction, and so we share that data back with our veterinarians as well. So another acronym or data point that a lot of vets I've found don't consider is customer lifetime value. And so there's certainly that cost to acquire a customer, but then also what is that customer worth to you? And I think the softer, kind of less finance guy side of that is, are you building that long-lasting, high-value relationship with that pet parent that then may transcribe into the next pet and the next pet and the next pet after that? And so those are all things that we think about kind of every day, because that's how we deliver value to our vets, which are the most important side of our network, and also things that we share when we can with our veterinary partners as well.
I can add on as well to that. Speaking for pet insurance, which is my background, I know that this applies to some degree to a program like Erin is offering. I just don't know the number, but insured pets increase vet revenue tremendously. They increase loyalty, they increase volume, and overall, an insured pet will give a vet about 2 times the lifetime value that a non-insured pet will. Again, I assume that this translates also to network kinds of programs. I'm just not sure if the percentages are exact. So it's really, folks who are investing in a program, a network program with discounts, or an insurance program, or a wellness program, or something else, are going to utilize the services. And it would be in a veterinarian's best interest to think about how that can impact their practice positively.
So Erin and Heidi, you talked about, we threw around a lot of words here. So let's pause for a moment, maybe back up and help our listeners understand. Let's kind of differentiate, if you will, maybe insurance versus discounts and member programs versus subscription plans. I think that kind of covers 3 different ways of how, well, and then probably the last one, the 4th one, is by financing emergency care by debt, right? So we have debt, insurance, subscription payments, and then kind of a discount or member program. So kind of walk us through all those buckets and what that means.
Yeah, I can kind of take first pass. I think, and I would never disagree with, from a veterinary perspective, an insured client is absolutely, kind of top of the line value add. And by the way, I very much view our product as complementary to pet insurance, certainly at an employer level, but also at an individual level. About 12% of United Pet Care members also report having, typically it's an accident only policy. It kind of covers both ends. What if the big unexpected happens, and also preventative and wellness. And so, I would call, very openly insurance the gold standard. Back to the world as it is versus how we wish it to be. As Heidi stated, only about 4% of pets are insured, in spite of 95% of pet parents considering their pet to be a member of the family. If only 4% of our actual children were insured, there would be riots in the streets. Again, insurance can be really great for a small set of pet parents, for a small set of pets, but just the reality is, it's been around for a long time. It's generally not for lack of people having heard that insurance is an option, but there is a gigantic sector of the pet parent population that is looking for a solution that are probably not going to be candidates for a traditional insurance product. And that's any pet generally over a certain age. That's, pets, God love those little French bulldogs, number 1 pet in America. laundry list of breed-specific conditions that likely are not going to be covered by an insurance. There are typically, stages of life where it's going to be cost prohibitive, or if there are pre-existing conditions, wellness, just things that are not covered in the vast majority of insurance policies that leave a big sector of the market unaddressed. Heidi and I have had many of these conversations. What I love about where we sit is anytime you have 20% tailwind growth in an industry and also 90% headroom, it leaves a lot of opportunity for collaboration. So we're all sitting on the same side of the table here in that we're saying, how do we get more people into the vet more and take better care of their animals? And quite frankly, however they do that, I think is a win for everybody on this call and everybody listening to this call as well. So what we view our product, again, as complementary to insurance, potentially at an individual level, but certainly complementary in the sense of another tool in the toolkit for a veterinarian to offer options, just hearkening back to that spectrum of care, to bring more people into a place where it's better for the vet, better for the animal, and ultimately better for the pet parent. I think that touches on kind of the first two. From a subscription plan or a wellness plan standpoint, again, fantastic options. Typically, once you have already sourced a client and have gotten them in the door to talk about those options. A wellness plan offering typically is not going to do anything to bring in net new clients, but generally will help you enhance that lifetime value and lock that person in. Now, sometimes those can function too well, and we've gotten a lot of, not to, Banfield is good at a lot of things. I think sometimes they can do a little bit too aggressive with those plans, and are they actually doing the right thing for the client? I think there's a happy medium there, and again, creating a positive consumer experience while also delivering a product that's financially accretive to the veterinary practitioner.
Yeah, and I agree with Aaron, especially what he said about insurance and a network plan and even a wellness plan. Those things can work together. The truth is insurance is not cheap. And so if we're talking about accessibility and affordability, a lot of the people that buy insurance could pay the vet without the insurance, right? They buy it because they're fairly savvy about financial instruments, and insurance is a good idea for them, especially if they have a breed like a Frenchie or a Great Dane or something else. They'll likely need to use that insurance. But to Aaron's point, it's not for everybody. It's not priced for everybody. I'm hopeful that those prices can, moderate and in the future with things like networks or other ways of, helping an insurer get a better cost structure so they can offer the plan less expensively. But, I think a product like a subscription plan or a discount plan, network plan is more accessible to more people. And so I totally think that's a great path to go. And making sure that it hits on the things that people really need, that they're, maybe haven't thought of how to budget for. They're the services that a pet can really benefit from to prevent disease in the future, to address, conditions as they come up, to manage chronic conditions and that sort of thing.
So just to summarize for our listeners, what I'm hearing is a small subset of consumers have insurance. That's great. And so as veterinarians, we get kind of alarmed about how we're generating revenue, but insurance will be a small subset of how we generate revenue. The purpose of the discount or member plan or in-network plan is it's a source of new customers, right? So we're growing our practice, we're growing our business, we're making sure that those visits, the number of visits are going up every year. So in a way, we're not having to do all of that heavy lifting on marketing, communications, the cost of advertising, which, by the way, I own an e-commerce business, and the cost of advertising these days is insane. And then we have some, wellness or subscription plans that can also help, similar to the discount plans. To your point, it helps the customer budget over time, but maybe doesn't bring in new customers. And I would be remiss if I didn't add the last category, which we probably should always keep in the back of our pocket, which is financing tools like care credit, right? So for better or for worse, that customer that just didn't plan at all, we have that finance option, right? So urgent need, pet needs care immediately. Maybe we sign them up on the discount at the same time, but they just can't afford that big bucket of money. Then we have care credit who can fill that gap.
Yeah. And I would just add, not to be morbid or anything, but there's another category, and that is saying no to care. And that can result in a pet, dying or being uncomfortable. It can result in euthanasia or surrender or something else. So that's also a response that pet parents can have. And certainly we want to help people have to, avoid that kind of response.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we talked about, I think the answer there is moving more folks to getting those interventions further upstream. Absolutely a place in the market for patient financing. I think everybody kind of understands the impact that can have on consumers. I believe it's about 40% of pet parents that have taken on some form of high interest debt. How we pitch that back to human resources is then you have an employee who's financially stressed out. They have a sick, they have a sick pet at home. They're worried about how they're going to pay for that care. And then they have an ongoing high interest credit card bill that can influence work performance, mental health, everything like that. To your point, Bonnie, on kind of sourcing new clients, I think, again, with now the preponderance of the workforce being millennial and Gen Z pet parents, 75% of our members stated that they did not have a primary vet upon joining the program. And so again, just veterinarians kind of seeing the world as it is, not how they'd like it to be. I think this is a bit of a generational thing. Resident millennial, fickle consumer, moves a lot, very transient population base. And I think in general, locking that client in is something that can prove to be very difficult. It is a little bit a bit of a departure from the days where that was the pediatrician, but we want to get back to that. And I think the way to do that is to find that program that locks that person in, whether it's wellness or insurance, which they could go to any vet starting tomorrow, or a program like ours that creates that one-to-one relationship between the pet parent and the vet.
All right, have to admit, don't really want to admit my age, but, growing up for me, even when I was in practice and I owned a practice, right, I was way back in the day of the yellow pages. So the way that we acquired clients is people would flip through the yellow pages, find that veterinarian, or they would drive by the practice. And now, Erin, what I'm hearing you say is that that's not how the new consumer finds anything. The first thing they do is they go to their phone, maybe a laptop, but predominantly their phone. What's near me? What can I find? And probably veterinary practices might be a little bit behind the times in being able to be present digitally. And so really, again, what I'm hearing you say is United Pet Care is taking away that heavy lift on having to engage digitally, at least reducing it a little bit. Still need to have your social media, your website, all that sort of stuff. But in terms of driving traffic, driving engagement with the practice, United Pet Care is helping with driving that business.
Yeah, I think I can safely say that very few veterinarians get into practice to become digital marketing experts. And so that's where I think, the key to any small business, which 80% of our network partners are independent small business veterinarians, is to find trusted experts to source the parts of the job to allow you to focus on generally the things that you love, the reason that you got into the business, while doing so profitably and being able to make a living. Our goal, Bonnie, is to really ensure a seat at the table for these independent practices, and in some cases consolidators and small chains, to level the playing field against, I'll just say it, the Banfields of the world, who have a 9-figure marketing budget, who have an app, who have a team of robo-dialers, every time your policy comes up to lapse. Those things are just not typically going to be scalable or at the disposal of your average independent vet. And so obviously there's a cost to our program of that strategic discounting of services, but we firmly believe that we add significantly more value by becoming a trusted expert in that new customer sourcing, customer attraction, and retention.
So Heidi, what would you say to veterinarians who really struggle having that price conversation with their customer, right? I know sometimes even as an associate, if you don't make the prices and don't understand why the price is such, sometimes there's even a sticker shock for the veterinarian presenting the estimate. So how can veterinarians get more comfortable with talking about pricing?
I think, making it more of a standard practice, having pricing sheets that they can show, it doesn't all have to come from just a verbal conversation. How do you sort of have a menu that you can share at any given time before the pet comes in, while the pet is in the office, after you've diagnosed, that sort of thing, I think helps people realize the breakdown of those costs. If your pet's getting teeth removed, for example, it might, cost $100 to remove the teeth and $900 for all the other stuff to anesthetize, to, give them take home medicine, all this other stuff. Right. So helping people understand the big picture. And I'm always a fan of sort of like a menu-based pricing approach that gives people that transparency and understanding of what the whole picture looks like, not just one little piece of the puzzle. It's like, if you buy a house, for example, you're like, well, I'm just going to give the down payment. Well, no, you probably have to pay another $50,000 in fees and, recording and all these kinds of things that catches you by surprise. What can you do to make this definable for people? And it doesn't have to just be what you're saying verbally at the moment. It can be more of like a menu base that you can share with confidence with your customers that also shows them what the options are.
Well said. And I would say the more surface area that you have to have those conversations, because you've got somebody that's coming in regularly, that's when trust builds. That's, This is from human healthcare, but I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that they did a study that could predict with 99% accuracy whether or not a doctor had been sued for malpractice. And it was all about trust and nonverbal and body language and the way that they spoke to the clients. So there's obviously a lot underlying that, but I think the more times you see somebody, in general, the more times they feel like you're on their side, and that you have the same shared objective. And to Heidi's point, you can forecast a little bit. We have an absolutely phenomenal vet, and we have 2 terrier mixes. They're both rescues, but we know they're at least partially terrier. And when they were about 4, we started to have that conversation of they're going to need to get teeth extracted. And so that helped, lead into us 2 years down the line. Sure enough, even though we do everything that we can to prevent it, 3 or 4 teeth needed to get extracted during the last cleaning. And that helped us kind of socialize that. We had some money saved up. And I think that, but that requires that trust-based recurring relationship between the pet parent and the vet, because you're not going to get from A to Z all within the, 45-minute consultation that results in a $2,000 bill. That has to happen over time.
Right. Breed education, right? Those sorts of things, or the consequences of you, having a certain behavior with your pet at home, maybe what you feed them, how often you walk them, whatever the things are that might contribute to a sickness down the road. Doing that type of socializing with the pet parents who can get them ready for, I don't want to spend that kind of money down the road, so I'm going to walk them 1 more time a day, or I'm going to put them on a different kind of food, or whatever. I'm going to get their vaccinations and their flea tick and heartworm, right? My daughter's dog just came down with fleas. She didn't have it on a preventive. And well, now she has to go back, right? She has to get the flea bath, the whole thing. So it's those things that you learn. If a veterinarian had had that talk with her, perhaps she would have bought the flea preventive, right? And not had to pay for it now.
Well, I love everything we've talked about here today, right? We've talked about how different programs drive consumer behavior, just like treats drive behavior in our pets, right? So we want to make it a fear-free visit for both the pet and the pet parent. And we have talked about how that can impact and help the financials and keep the clinic financially sound. I think the number one thing I really like about what I'm hearing, and I would encourage our listeners to really let it sink in, is this idea that United Pet Care helps veterinarians build relationships. And what I hear over and over and over again of why a veterinarian wants to keep independent, why they want to work for an independent practice or own an independent practice, is because what independents do better than any other system or corporate or chain of practices is they are good at building that relationship. So really, Erin, what United Pet Care is offering is a tool, a nice big heavy tool in the tool bag that's really going to help accelerate that relationship, take some of the work out of building that relationship, and reduce the cost of advertising to get more pet parents into the practice.
Very well said, Bonnie. Maybe just one point to emphasize, it's a tool to be used at the discretion and at the convenience of the veterinarian. We don't sign any vets to long-term contracts. We want to deliver an excellent member experience, which means a clinic and a vet that's happy and excited about offering the strategic discount. So we only ask for 30 days notice. If it no longer suits the business needs of the vets, you can go on pause if you're down a body and you need to hire before you can take any new clients. We offer a variety of options because at the end of the day, if we're serving our vets well, they're serving our clients well, our members well, and everybody is happy, everybody wins. I'd say the statistic I'm probably most proud of is that we have a 97% vet retention rate annually. And so we are delivering value to our network partners. That 3% actually almost categorically is because they got acquired by a consolidator and then we get turfed out with a lot of other stuff that the independent vet was doing. And so that's, kind of my metric for ensuring that we're continuing to deliver value to our veterinarians, and in doing so, delivering value to our members.
So one last thing before we wrap this up. The one thing that's going through my mind is, I love it. This is great. Another great tool for my tool belt, but I'm tired. I'm exhausted. What is this going to mean for my staff, my practice manager? Like, oh my God, if I have to implement and make one more change, my head is going to explode. Or like I've said in the past, my eyeballs are going to pop out.
That is very real. That is one place where we have tried to differentiate ourselves in terms of the front desk and the user experience. Heidi, you alluded to, kind of best in class insurance being one where that reimbursement happens at that time of service. That has implications not only for the member who has to float that balance during the interim, but then also for the vet who has to provide documentation or be involved with that process. It can be confusing. The standards are different across carriers. We eliminate all of that red tape. We can help you sit side by side, program the savings code into the PIM system. We have both kind of electronically verifiable membership records. The member shows their card. I also mentioned the database that the vet has on their side. And that our goal is to have that be as quick and painless a transaction as possible. The savings are administered at time of service by clicking one button within the PIM system. That allows the veterinarian, should they so choose, to track on their own the vet visits and the spend for United Pet Care members. It allows the member to see, hey, because I was a UPC member, I saved X amount, which is good for us in terms of retaining members, but then also doesn't create this ongoing burden for the individual sitting at the front desk that then has to follow up or kind of be involved in that beyond that transaction. So we try to make this as easy and low impact as possible. We'll come out and do trainings or virtual lunch and learns depending on the location of the practice. We have handy kind of front desk reference guides to fully appreciating that this is just one more thing, generally on top of a veterinary practice that is probably dealing with a lot of different priorities and just a lot of kind of chaos, hopefully positive chaos, but chaos at any given time.
Well, Aaron, Heidi, as we wrap this up, I would be remiss if I didn't direct our listeners to United Pet Care. So check out United Pet Care. Aaron, what's the website? How can they connect with you?
UnitedPetCare.com. And if there's interest, we have an inbound form where a vet can reach out and learn more about partnership or directly choose to list their practice. Or you can email us at vets@UnitedPetCare.com and somebody will get back to you right away.
All right, Aaron, I have one last thing to say, which is I have a hair crush on your hair. You have like the perfect hair. Perfect. And I'm a hair connoisseur. So lovely hair, Aaron. Lovely hair.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. This is a warm and fuzzy small business and pet story. So my wife owns a pet store, and in her same complex, there's a salon. The salon owners have 3 pets. And so we have a deal where we get our hair cut for free and they get pet food for free.
That's
so
awesome.
The gray market of the small business economy, keeping things going and keeping me looking fresh for my podcast. So thank you. Thank you for that.
All right, Heidi. Heidi, you are our marketer, insurance guru, executive extraordinaire. If people have more questions, comments, if they want to reach out to you, how can they reach you, Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to be clear about what I do for the pet industry, I'm a strategic growth advisor to pet businesses and founders. If you're interested in talking, you can reach me probably easiest on LinkedIn. Just do a search for Heidi Sirota. And you'll find me. I don't think there's too many of them, and we can connect that way.
Well, I would love to hear, do you lecture? Are you on the conference circuit at all?
I do sometimes. Yep, I do podcasts and I talk at conferences. I do, individual consulting and advising and those sorts of things.
Well, so grateful to have you both here on our podcast today, the Veterinary Insider. Aaron, glad to hear about United Pet Care. Heidi, really grateful for your insights today. I would recommend our listeners check out United Pet Care. Heidi Sirota, follow her on LinkedIn. And again, we will close with the fact that this podcast has been powered by United Pet Care as well as the Independent Veterinary Practitioners Association. Check us out at iVeterinarians. My favorite benefit is independent radiologists serving independent clinicians, but we have a lot of other things we'd like you to check out. So again, happy podcasting. So glad we had you today, and subscribe and follow us for our next show.